Welcome, everyone, to another live edition of Silicon Heartland Sessions. We are recording here in Columbus, Ohio, as part of the Cloud Nirvana conference. Yes, Columbus is on point. This is the second stop in our live podcast series. We were in Cleveland yesterday. Now we're back here in Columbus with another incredible group of leaders. Our theme across these events have been, how do we make sure AI elevates people rather than replaces them? And today we'll hear diverse perspectives on what that looks like in practice, from talent and culture to design and product leadership. And of course, a big thank you to the sponsors who make Cloud Nirvana and this podcast possible. Rackspace Technology, your trusted partner for multi-cloud solutions, helping organizations innovate faster and smarter. Sigma Computing, modern business intelligence for everyone, turning data into actionable insights. Trace3, helping organizations harness the power of technology to achieve real business outcomes. And Varonis, leaders in data security and analytics, protecting sensitive information wherever it lives. Now, let me introduce our panelists. We've got Robin Barbacane, Global Chief Talent Development Officer, Rackspace Technology. Awesome. Manisha Mahawar, VP of TPM, AI Tooling and Localization from OpenTable.
Hi, I'm excited to be here.
Awesome. Kelly Wilson, VP of Talent Management, Cardinal Health.
Hello, it's great to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
Welcome. And Jen Dunlap, Talent and Client Engagement Director, Turnberry Solutions.
Hi, friends.
And Lacey Picazo, Founder and CEO, Zoco Design.
Thank you. Super stoked.
And by the way, if you don't know Zoco Design, they're responsible for our awesome brand and the Cloud Nirvana logos. So we owe them a huge debt of gratitude. So let's get started. So Lacey, I kind of want to start with you. So when you reached out, you said you've built your entire career at the intersection of tech and humanity. And that's your jam. Since today's conversation is all about making AI or making sure that AI elevates people rather than replaces them, what does that mean to you?
That is totally my jam, and that is language I use. So I think that was directly pulled from our email thread. Hi, I'm Lacey. So as you shared, my entire career has been built in user experience and behavior design. And my team is typically found working alongside product and technology teams to help them build things that are actually adopted, chosen, and used long-term. We get the fortune of being able to work with lots of different tech teams who work in complex spaces, whether that's healthcare. We work with our friends here at OCLC. But industry aside, like what makes all of those products succeed or fail is one thing, and that is the messiness of humans. Like, can you get people to choose to do the things that you want them to do or not? Like, give me a single KPI in your world, whether that is adoption or churn or something else that isn't reliant on getting a human to do the thing you want them to do. And that's true not only with the products we're deploying into the world, it's true internally too, right? It's true with how we work with other humans. Can we influence our peers? Can we actually get folks to align on what's important and be talking about the same thing? Can we collaborate cross-functionally? Those things are still really hard. And I believe will continue to be hard, if not harder. Just because you can ship things quicker doesn't necessarily mean that we've removed the messiness of humans. So that's why I'm actually a really big optimist about the future and where things are going. Or I think the teams that focus on the topics we're talking about here today at Cloud Nirvana on trying to understand people, what motivates and moves them. Because I believe if you move people, you move metrics. And so the folks that are really focused there and investing energy are going to be the ones that win.
Awesome. Thank you. That was beautiful. So in fact, it reminds me of your presentation, Manisha. You shared that employees tend to fall in three personas: protectors who can't be convinced, pragmatists who get it, and pioneers who are the early adopters. How has that framework helped you think about adoption and culture at OpenTable?
I would say kind of like, that was the foundation for us when we were going through our journey. Because if you think about kind of like, none of us get up in the morning thinking, I'm not going to do whatever Manisha is asking today, right? That's not the case. They all think that, hey, I want to be the most helpful person I can be. But sometimes it's just you don't know where the starting point is. And knowing the pioneers and seeing somebody was so easy for the followers, or I don't want to call them followers, or pragmatist people to just know that, oh, this is the route I have to follow and I can do it, even though, yes, I have the little hesitation, but that taking that path, which somebody is walking in front of me, has worked brilliantly for us at OpenTable.
Fascinating. Robin, I kind of want to come back over to you and the conversation that you and Brian had about how you're building AI at Rackspace. It was really, really fascinating about how you're thinking about leveraging artificial intelligence as an extension of your workforce. We'll talk about that for sure, but I kind of want to talk a bit about Lacey's point and Manisha's point. Did you encounter resistance and challenges at when you decided to bring AI with FAIR to Rackspace, and how did you kind of get over some of the cultural friction that you may have encountered?
We did. We encountered a lot of, and we continue to encounter a lot of friction as we go through. And I think we use some of the same techniques that we heard the speakers talk about today. One of the things that really helped us a lot is our CEO and our executive leadership team got on board right away. And we changed leadership behaviors from that level all the way down through the organization, where we had them hold their teams accountable. And we let them know that it was important to us to do it. Brian used the bad C word, compliance testing. It was compliance testing. There was an expectation that you were going to complete all of the certifications that we had out there. And when you didn't, all of a sudden you had the, chief human resources officer saying, hey, Joe, what's going on? Like, why didn't you do your homework? So people started to come on board, and then they started to see what was in it for them. We had to go with the Whiffam factor, right? Of how's it going to make your lives easier? And that's whenever they really started to kind of come on board more and more.
Excellent. So the key is it starts at the top.
It starts at the top. Yeah, 100%.
Kelly, Jen, anything to add?
I went to an event at Zoco, ironically, and a Fortune 100 bank product designer was talking about how to even get people to take the AI training. So they had put all this effort into just the AI training and using some of those like core UX components to get people even curious enough to take the training. And half the time it's being like, hey, your teammates did it. Do you want to do it? Your ELT said to do it. Do you want to do it? And just kind of just cycling through different types of, motivation factors to get people just curious enough to even engage with the content that, your HR team is working so hard to kind of put together. And they're like, look at this cool thing we've made. But, you got to use different ways of motivating people because we're all motivated differently.
Just building on that, I think one of our values and one of our behaviors is about inviting curiosity. We've talked about that quite a bit. How do we enable everyone to just become a little bit more curious and dip their toe in? IT technologists are ready to do that all the time, but individuals at other levels of the organization and individuals that may not have that comfort level, maybe some of your followers or you, whatever the terminology you're pragmatists. If we can help them just move a little further along that curve, I think it's going to make a big difference. I said the other day, we have an individual who writes terrific emails. And I said, what is better than Chris's email written? It's going to be Chris with AI. So doubling, blending capabilities together, I think is going to have to be the next frontier.
I think one of my favorite slides today, I think was yours, Manisha, was the one that showed the person in the room with the wall and all of the different logos from all the AI tools that are out there. And it got me wondering, yesterday in Cleveland, there was a lot of dialogue around buy versus build. And how do you think about, purchasing new AI tools and so forth, and from a strategic way, perspective, because at the end of the day, you could end up in a situation, and the message that I got from you is you could end up in a situation where you've adopted hundreds of tools, but you're really not moving the ball down the field. And I kind of want to come back to you, Lacey, thinking about the work that you do at Zoco Design. And, we talked earlier about how people are so, so committed to the tools that they use. Like, try to get a software engineer to move away from the IDE that they love or the CI/CD platform that they love. It's not easy. I imagine that's the same kind of challenge at a design firm. How do you think about leveraging these tools and helping your staff to see the art of the possible relative to artificial intelligence and these new tools that are coming on the horizon?
I mean, we have a bit of an unfair advantage just because we're embedded in so many teams at a time. So we do have to be kind of tool agnostic to use and leverage the things that our clients do. But I think it actually is related to the last question on change management is like teammates have to understand the why and they have to be able to connect it to the impact of their work. And it's really hard to get people on board if it's opaque or if it's, thou must use AI. Like we'll actually tell clients now when they put a new initiative on our desk, like, okay, what problem are we solving? And if you're not sure, like, can we just call a spade a spade? If this was just your board said to make this thing so we could check a box, like, let's just call that out, right? Because that's very different than, okay, we're trying to solve a meaningful problem. We have a strategy in place to solve that thing. And therefore, this is the best tool to do that. And I think right now we're in a bit of a tech bubble where people are experimenting to experiment, right? To learn and to explore and to build their own point of view versus always knowing, okay, this is what we're building towards. And I think devoid of that, not only will the end impact not be there, but you're not going to be able to get your teammates on board, right? If they don't actually connect the purpose of their work and see that reflected in the metrics that you're moving for the business. So I think that's the biggest opportunity.
So starting with the why, sounds like to me.
Yeah, always.
Yeah.
It's old school, but it's still the most important.
Yeah,
piece.
that makes a lot of sense. I kind of want to go back to Robin and Manisha. Thinking about that slide. And also, Robin, there were lots of questions that were coming in when you and Brian were up here asking about your tech stack and the tools and the AI you're using. I'm curious, how do you think about, the landscape of all these AI tools and how do you go through the decision-making process when you do decide to bring a tool in the house?
I would say, like, for me, my biggest goal is that do I have a co-pilot for every job family in my organization? Because what I realize again through all this journey that the hype is real. One particular co-pilot that may be very good for JavaScript is not going to cut off for Android folks. And for them, it's a very different kind of skill set or the co-pilot training is what they need. So is literally my goal. And we go through that buying decision or build decision based on that. Have I given this community what they need to scale up?
Right.
And yeah, that's what's working for me.
Awesome.
So I would just echo everything that she said. Yes, I agree with all of that. And what, Lacey was saying, back to what we were talking about, strategy drives structure, drives process. What's the why? What's the problem that you're solving for? What's the structure that you're trying to achieve, right? And then that determines what your process is. So what is the AI that you're going to use? What do you want it to achieve for you? What do you want it to accomplish? And then go through that build versus buy, kind of ROI perspective, from an ROI perspective, what is it doing for the organization? And from a budget perspective, does it make sense for us at that point?
Makes sense. So you'll hopefully remember at the beginning of my talk, I did a poll for everybody here in the room. I was actually kind of surprised by the response. And for those listening, that poll was, who in the room are afraid that AI is going to eliminate your job? And who are the ones that are excited? The vast majority of folks in the room are excited about it. And I thought that was interesting. But I thought what was also very interesting, Robin, when you and Brian came up, you mentioned that, in HR circles, those numbers tend to be flipped, that there are actually many employees that are worried about losing their job. So I kind of want to open this up to everybody. How do leaders bridge that gap between excitement in some places and fear in others?
My recommendation would be to be transparent across the board. And then, not, if you set expectations that we're not going to do an elimination and then an elimination follows, you've now lost the trust of people that they're not going to lose their job. So I think the more transparent you can be with folks early on about how their job is going to change while still existing. So some of the first use cases are coming from ops, they're coming from finance, they're coming from your call center, right? And so these people are seeing the tools impact their day to day. If you're talking to a call center rep that now has their call summarized and auto things and things that used to take them 4 minutes after each call, and now that's all done automatically, they see that volume of work changing. So the more that you can give them an understanding of what you anticipate their future in the organization to look like with these tools implemented, I think the more trust that you'll have long term. And I'm seeing a decent amount of organizations say, you're not going to lose your jobs, you're not going to lose your jobs, you're not going to lose your jobs, adopt this tool. And then, 6 months later, a huge riff. And so that's where I think the real qualm is, to people understand why that riff occurred, what in the business drove that, and what positions were eliminated and why. And I think the more transparent and upfront that you can be, the more trust that you'll maintain with your existing staff.
I'd like to also add to that from a leadership perspective, I kind of call upon the executive leadership team, the CEO, leaders at all levels of the organization. Kelly talked about this, and I talked about this too, right? We're putting it as part of our workforce planning strategy. So as you're doing succession planning, as you're doing career development, as you're identifying, there are going to be jobs that are going to be eliminated. Definitely write that down. It's going to happen. But if you have a workforce planning strategy and you're getting ahead of that, you're looking at, if I'm going to have this particular job and I'm not going to need this skill set anymore, how can I repurpose this talent? Within that talent, if you're doing a talent review, who are the people that we cannot afford to lose? And then how do we start to create career development, plans and processes for them to be able to shift into different parts of the organization?
You talked about this too, though. It starts with the strategy, or what are the capabilities and the areas that you absolutely need to grow in as an organization. So what are the AI enabled areas that you have to identify? So as an organization, I think defining what those are and then prioritizing the go afters. But I think why people have hope now is that it's the augment versus the automation, that they see jobs becoming easier, putting files into Knowledge Assistant, and something that would have taken hours and hours and hours, as people have talked about today. We need to get that more pervasive. So if everybody saves 15 minutes a day, that's not a job elimination, but what it's doing is it's making you better, and all boats will rise. I think that's the benefit.
I like that.
I would say agreed. All of the points. And we have a running joke in our tech OpenTable community that we all have to learn ballet. So that is the safest job. We don't know. Robot might do a better ballet thing. But coming back to, I know Robin also mentioned, is there anybody in this room says, I don't have enough job? And saying, oh man, I'm getting bored at my work, right? It's not the case. And what we are telling people, that we believe in the work-life balance. And the first step to have that work-life balance is to just offload the task you don't want to do to AI. Let that AI agent do the work that you are not interested in, is one strategy. Second is OpenTable. If we see the growth, we are growing 20% year after year. That means we have to add people year after year. And that's where these agents comes in picture to augment you with the knowledge and the information that you need to perform your job successfully. I think that's some of the strategies.
I know I'm not the moderator, so forgive me for this, but I think, how do you help get individuals who are super fearful? Not this room. This room is not fearful at all, I don't feel. But how do you get individuals that are super fearful or just unwilling to even take that first step? What do you, you've got your Tinker Labs, which I like. Yeah.
That's what I was going to say. I love the Tinker Labs, and I love that she had 2 simple rules, and it was show up and bring your computer.
Right.
That's what I've done. I've been in meetings where I would be open up and now let's do Copilot, and let me show you. I'll share my screen. Here, we're going to take notes. And they'd be like, oh my gosh, it's, and then whenever we would have an agenda created by Copilot, or we would have an action plan created by Copilot after the meeting, people were just blown away. And that was that kind of fear factor that, Brian talked about within our organization, that when people understood what the language was, what the capability was, what it actually was doing, they were able to jump in right away and start using it.
Well said. And for the folks that are listening, I kind of want to provide a little context. So Manisha, you mentioned running a biweekly Tinker Hour to help your teams experiment and get more comfortable with AI. Can you maybe share how that works and what impact it's had on adoption? And for the rest of the panel, Could you see something like this working inside your organizations?
As the name says, Tinker Hour, right? And I know I mentioned kind of like, there are people, we come in different flavors. And because we come in different flavors, there are some people who are just, maybe I don't even know where to start. And I'm very afraid to ask this question in a bigger forum. So this is a forum where if two other people are asking, and we plant people, trust me, who come and says, I don't understand what is this doing for us. Glean, how should I even use it? What is this Glean agent all about? And that gives the permission to others to ask a similar, I don't want to call it a stupid question, but that a question that maybe I'm hesitant to ask. And then we walk them through that this is how this agent works. See this and exactly show them the step-by-step process and tell them to follow us.
Mm-hmm.
And that we just do a poll to say, what do you guys want to talk about? Also, is there a focus topic that we should bring? How to build an agent? We have a Glean tool in our system where you can build on-demand agents with clicks, with the workflows. And how should we, what are the different things that we will be sharing? So we collect some top-down, some surveys, and there is an hour where you can just kind of bring
Fascinating.
anything you want.
If I could just kind of comment on that too, being the only HR person, no, you're an HR person too. You are too, yeah. But HR and IT don't speak the same language. And it's a scary language that IT speaks. It's like, I don't even know what you're talking about. So the more that I found out that I could be the person that could interpret what they were just talking about so that like I said, the general person can understand it, the better. So the more that you start to realize when you're using acronyms or you're talking about some kind of new technology, stopping for a moment and explaining what that is, because most people go back to middle school and they won't ask the stupid question.
The wall goes up.
That's exactly right.
I want to add something too on why I think, Manisha, your tactic is working so well, just from a behavior change standpoint. I found that most people, they can't learn all at once. I know my style as a CEO is to just dump my team with a ton of information and then be off into the night, you've got it, you'll be fine. And I've learned the hard way that is not how other people learn, and it's not how they adopt new behaviors. And so I think what works is it's a ritual, right? It's something that you expect. It's something that's repeated over time. You're building a tiny habit. And because of that, it gives you space to fail. It starts to build a new muscle. And each time you build your comfort. Because I think one of the challenges with a lot of teams that we've worked with are people just have fear. We were talking about fear earlier of, will I lose my job? Will my superpowers still be valuable? But I think what I've learned, again, from our space, is people are typically not afraid of change. They're afraid of loss. And how can they see through just iteration, experimentation, and doing this over time? My superpowers are still valuable. I don't have to be so beholden to the way I've done my job before. This tool, these new things can actually help me and uplift my superpowers. But it takes time and experience to learn that from most people.
So true. And I'll just say kind of I know one of us mentioned about the customer support team. That's Agent Force is definitely deflecting 85% of our calls. Mm-hmm. And now what we are doing as an OpenTable is teaching how to code. So there is a 3 series of Tinker session where we are calling it Anybody Can Code, where we are teaching those people how to do vibe coding. So now you're not just a customer support person, but you can automate things for your department.
Right.
And that's how kind of reimagining each skill set and just lowering the boundary to switch between jobs. It's no more the part of the lane. It's all about loops is how we are thinking in our organization.
Well said.
I think if you do, if you get one person to dip their toe in AI, and maybe we call it something different just to make it easy, that will create the ripple effect. Absolutely. Right. It's almost like one time makes all the difference.
So I kind of want to change the conversation a little bit and kind of drive away from tool adoption and AI adoption and more around how we can think about AI as an extension of our workforce. So, of course, I want to ask this question to you, Robin. When you and Brian were up here, what you shared was really fascinating. You described AI as a part of your talent strategy. You don't just roll out tools. You treat them like new hires with onboarding, training, coaching, even performance reviews. So can you walk us through how that works in practice? And for the rest of the panel, how do you think about this? Could treating AI as a part of the team with clear expectations and development be a way to put people first and reduce fear?
So one of the first things that comes to mind when you say that, and I think kind of inspired a bit by the comment that you just made, Kelly, I've talked with leaders and people on my team as well, that when you first start interacting with AI, you almost need to give it the instruction in the same way that you would an intern, right? If you are talking to a junior level employee, you're telling them exactly what to do. If you put your shoes on, put it on, tie your laces, put your left foot in front of your right foot, right? If you have an executive, you're giving them completely different instructions, or expectations are different. So when you get into that job description, when you get into defining what the expectations are, and you even get into that interacting with the AI, it's going to change as the AI learns. That may be kind of, intuitive to the people in this room primarily, but to the general leader, it's not. And I think that's where the fear factor comes into play.
Anybody else?
Well, I like how you guys named all of yours and named them they're associated with departments. And I think that's really fun because oftentimes I'm saying if someone tells me no within the organization, or let me take that back. If someone tells me I don't know, or I can't do that, or no, because I can't do that, I'm always like, did you ask ChatGPT, right? Before you ever tell me you don't know something, or I'm like, did you look? And so I like almost giving it, some name where it's did you check with Rita? Did you check with Rex? What'd Rex say? And it is almost a comical, kind of creating a persona around it. But it's kind of the same way we adopted Google, right? We created a verb. It can kind of be the same way as creating a noun. And it's well, let's go ask our friend Rex,
I'd love to make an addition of something that maybe is a different take. I've built my company incredibly selfishly, which sounds a little bit strange, but I try and help my team build their roles and futures in Zoco very selfishly too. And by that, I mean, the biggest way that we've adopted these things is look at all the things that we're doing today that we really hate and don't enjoy doing. And for me, a lot of those are replicable. I'm just not a live in systems process sort of person. And what I found is to support our culture and our talent density, it creates great retention to help people identify what are the things we're having to regularly do that, gosh, they just really drain our souls, right? We built custom GPTs for MSA reviews because I do not want to spend my time looking at legal documents. That is the worst possible thing for my brain to be doing. But it's very much a pattern in the system of what we're looking for, what we're trying to identify. And it's very unique to Zoco. And so building that took away me needing to do that, our head of operations needing to do that. And so I think that can be a great first step, is for each teammate identify from a personal development plan standpoint, where are you energized and what totally drains your batteries? Yeah. And are there areas there that would be a great fit?
If I could, that's a great example, I think. And again, back to how you can help leaders, because I think another fear factor is humans not being involved in that process, right? And I would assume what probably happens in your MSA review is a recommendation comes back to you as the CEO to decide yes, this, no, that. It just takes 85 to 95% of that work that's mind-numbingly boring that you don't want to go through unless you're a lawyer and you love contracts, which we're not in that. That'll be next week's conversation. But that's the thing, that there's always going to be a human element. And that's why we said AI is not going to take your job. People who know how to use AI will take your job, because that makes you a more effective CEO on the role that you have.
Well said. Okay, I tell you what, we're going to go to the audience for some Q&A. But before we do that, I kind of want to do a quick round, real quick. I want to hear one thing from each of you. In one sentence, and we'll start with you, Kelly. In one sentence, what's the one thing that leaders can do today to make sure that AI elevates people rather than replaces them?
Leaders have to first take that first step.
Yeah.
They've got to dip their toe in if they haven't already. And if they have, then great. They can continue to spiral and it'll be exponential. But I know of individuals, and I think I was one a little while ago, that have been just a little reluctant to take that first step. And maybe it's renaming it. So we need some probably new names. Maybe we rename AI as magic. And because there are it does some magician-like things, and it might change behavior a little bit.
I would say, as a leader, accept that these tools are not magical. that
The
these
opposite of what I
tools,
said, yeah.
so these tools have its limitation,
Very true.
and knowing what these tools can't do is so important. And that, I think, is one thing.
I like that. Jen?
I think tying on to that, there's that IBM manual from 1979 that says, a computer can't be held accountable, so it can't make management decisions. So I do think on that note, that still applies to AI, right? Like as we're driving adoption and as we're driving behavior change and as it's working as an assistant to us, ensuring that people have a 360 understanding of not only, hey, you should use this, hey, you should try this, but knowing its limitations and finding that balance, especially to someone non-technical that doesn't understand hallucinations, finding that balance between this feels magical. Now let's check it and see if it's right. Or if it just pushed out complete gibberish and no one read through it. And, now we end up with things in the wild that no one even looked over. So the human review component and making sure that 360 view is in
Well
play.
said. Robin?
I'm laughing because my husband's like, you're fighting with Alexa. Because I'm like, that's not what I asked you. I asked you what the time it is and you told me the weather. So she
I think we can all relate to
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
But I would say just very simply be intentional. And I forget who said like getting 1% better than you were the next day. And I think it was the moderator from before, right? So just continuing to try to figure out how to incorporate it in your day-to-day practice and build those muscles.
I would say somebody mentioned in the last panel going back to basics. And I think we have to remember that from a first principles level, like there's as important as ever. So I would say moving forward, continue to stay really close to your customer and make sure you're solving problems that matter. How you solve them is going to change, but I think it's easy to forget some of those baseline things. They're evergreen and will continue to be the most impactful.
Well said. Thank you. Now, we're going to turn our attention to the audience. Who has a question? And I see many hands going up. Okay, Michael, the floor is yours. And please introduce yourself first before you give the question.
Hello, everyone. I'm Shira Sabor. I'm with JP Morgan Chase. So as you were talking about how people are shifting their work and the example with the customer service representative who now has meeting notes or call notes to refer, they don't have to type them up. I thought about as somebody who's in back-to-back meetings and as somebody who works out at the gym, when you're between reps, that rest time also serves as a time when you get to take a break, right? So for that person who's on the call, that time to write up the notes serves two purposes. One is to write up the notes. The other is to take a break between calls. So the question is, how are you helping the employees shift how they're working? Because they're still going to need a break, right? Maybe it just means the cadence is different, or they need it at a different time, or else their muscles are going to be sore. So can you give an example of how you're helping the employees who are using AI work differently, but still make sure they're getting what they need?
Well, I'm staring at you, Lacey, because of your example of like using AI in the places that people hate their jobs, right? So I do think it does come down to like, what is the leader's motivator for pushing these tools? And how is it being executed? Because when you're in a Zoco type environment, Lacey loves her team and her team is treated well and there for a long time. So Lacey's motivator is to find where her people are dissatisfied and solve that. Now, we exist under capitalism, good and bad. That's not always the motivator of every employer. Sometimes it can be make them work more efficiently, drive, go, faster, KPIs. And then people are losing the opportunity to have that like rest time in between calls. And the more that you treat people kind of like these automated robots, like the less humanity that does kind of come into it. So I do think it does kind of come back to the leader and how are we adopting these tools and what is the business motivator, right? Is it existing as an assistant to make someone's life easier? Or there are many examples in the wild where it's putting people in a situation where they have to push more and more. And you're going to lose good people when you don't give them that opportunity to recharge.
First of all, you're super kind. Thank you. I do want to add to that though, because I think we have to all commit that we're going to be wrong as leaders in the future. I think we've all been wrong many, many times before. And I think we have to just honor the ability to retro what we're changing. A lot of people are breaking a lot of things right now, including their cultures, including their employees' experience, including burnout. There's a lot that's breaking. So something that we do on our team, anytime we commit to testing something new, because I think to your point, Jen, like just doing more, being more efficient, sometimes breaks other things, is that anytime we deploy something new, we set a time frame where we say, we will retro this together. We will have a meeting. I'm going to put it on the calendar now. So it's my commitment to you, teammate, where we'll revisit this and know like, well, what happened unexpectedly from us making this change that maybe we weren't considering, so we can continue to pivot. Because I think the challenge is a lot of times we set things and then we just move forward and blaze ahead onto the next and don't go back to retro it. But we will all be breaking things in this new season ahead. So I think just honoring like more of an experimental mindset helps us correct those damages.
Can I also say one thing? That you as an individual, you have some responsibility as well. Don't always expect that top down people will tell you how these workflow would be, how you will be changing your day to day. The responsibility lies on you. Who knows your work better than you? You know it when you need a break. You know it, what this AI tool is augmenting you with. You tell the leadership how the workflow should be. So change that semantics and you will start to see the difference.
Next question.
Hi, guys. I'm Francisco Salinas. I'm a software engineer. And one of the questions I have for the panelists is what kind of approaches are you guys doing right now to allow for there to still be a lot of critical thinking when it comes to AI? Because I know that there could be a lot of optimism with AI adoption and everything like that, which is great. But I feel like, especially with a recent MIT study, which indicated that students that have been using AI for their studies compared to students that have not have actually dropped heavily in, I think the statistic was like 70% or something like that in terms of critical thinking skills. So I'm just wondering, like, what type of safeguards have you guys thought about to prevent critical thinking from dropping heavily, to preventing employees to not lose their critical thinking skills and still be able to rely heavily on the fact that that they should still make informed decisions, even if AI is facilitating basically everything?
I don't want to challenge the MIT study. Who am I to do that, right? But I feel like you need not less of critical thinking, but more of critical thinking to make these agents work for you. You have to be very clear in your thought process. And as a software engineer, I think the job would, like, I still code, by the way. The job is more now for me is, what's that architecture has to be? What do I need to instruct? And what problem am I solving? So I'm using more of my thinking time than versus coding time. So again, who am I to challenge MIT folks? But I think it'll be very different once we know more about these agents.
I got to jump in here. I've been sitting in my seat chomping at the bit. One of the things that I think everyone is putting AI first. And one of the most critical things to do is to flip the script. The person is always first. If you listen to the concerns, it's AI instead of me, right? But if you look at what AI can do for you and with you, so I always frame it as AI with you. So think of that as your co-pilots, your digital assistants, AI for you, your agent, right? You flip that script and say, you're in front of it. You're not behind it. You have to flip it. And then that's where the true transformation and mind shift really starts happening within your organization.
Right.
Whew, I feel better.
Thank you, Brian.
I'd love to add one more to this. So I didn't mention this, but in addition to my day job, I facilitate roundtables for VPs of product around the country. And this exact topic came up in San Francisco last week. There was a VP of product who shared very vulnerably, I feel like I'm getting dumber. I feel like I am not catching things as much. I feel like I know the answer when I don't. I'm losing my curiosity. What do I do? And this was not my idea, but a great table conversation topic on like, how can you leverage AI more for a coach for this purpose? Like, can you program it in, which you absolutely can, to be asking you challenging questions back, to require your inputs so that you are critically thinking? Because I think there's some behavior change happening where people are now more likely to just lift and take rather than to really assess what they're getting, especially if it seems right a number of times in a row where you're like, oh, that's pretty good. I'm not going to think about it anymore. So I do think that this is happening, whether it's real or not real and to what degree, but I think it really depends on how you use it. So whether you're getting that yourself from other humans, or you actually ask it to be your coach, to challenge you, to ask you thoughtful questions before you move to the next steps. I think being mindful that this is a possibility is important.
That was my reaction too. And this is a great question because it sparked a lot of conversation. You either begin or end with AI, in my opinion, in your process. So my son is a freshman who just started college, right? And this conversation's happening on campus everywhere, right? Where what I think it's fine to use is, say, for example, you're going to do a term paper. If you want to have it like give you some ideas or an outline, it should start to spark your thoughts, right? In the same way, when I was in school, we used encyclopedias back in the day, right? But you didn't just plagiarize everything in that. The same thing at work, right? It shouldn't be doing your work for you. Maybe it's giving you some ideas to think about so you don't have a blank screen staring back at you. And, or if you've done work, then you kind of run it through Chat GPT, or not Chat GPT, but whatever your, Copilot or AI that you're going to use to say, what am I not seeing? What questions should I be thinking about? What are some other perspectives that I could have at that point? So to me, it's like it's a bookend almost, a beginning and end.
That's it. Getting back to just accountability too, is at the end of the day, that leader, that individual is accountable for what they're delivering. And so whatever you got out of that partnership that you had, you're accountable. Your name is on it. So I think it ends with that.
Can I give another example? I'm like, we used to use calculator,
Mhm.
right? And I think previously, I remember when I was learning, I remembered all the tables till 50 and I could recite them, right? Right now, are we dumber? Because I can't even do simple math of 12 into 7. I would need my calculator, right? No, because I started to use my brain in a different part of the things.
Well said.
Same thing with the car, right? We have an automated car. We don't have those clutches and gears anymore. Our car takes care of it. And that's not making us dumber, but we are utilizing the different part of our brains and we are rewiring different sides and we're challenging. So my request again would be is to don't read too much onto those studies.
Well said.
We are human beings. We will evolve.
Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Joe Baroy, and I've got a question about the career path conversation. What if we have it all wrong? The old model for career path? What if that's not what it is now? What if actually losing your job is a good thing? What if we created a model or an environment where losing your job was a positive thing, and that's what we were working towards as a way of moving ourselves forward and working differently?
Seeing it as an opportunity. That's interesting.
Love the thinking. And essentially what you're saying is eliminating your job, eliminating the work that you do so that it's maybe automated. Is that one example potentially?
And could you create an environment where that was seen as a positive thing?
Right. You're incented.
And your career was more about moving, less about kind of moving up, but moving around and into new roles, new jobs, right? As you've all kind of alluded to, work is going to be different. The jobs you're going to do or have, the roles, the titles are going to be different. So what if we made it positive, losing your job?
Right.
A title going away, something not existing.
I'd love to hear other thoughts on this.
There's actually a book written by two former executives from, I think it was Deloitte, and that concept they call mass career customization. And what they talk about is not the corporate ladder, this kind of linear, but they call it a corporate lattice where you kind of go in a bunch of different directions, right? And so today we call that the agile workplace and things along those lines, right? I actually made, at one point in my career, work from home was not a thing. And I had just had a new baby and I didn't want to go back into being in the office 5 days a week. I just couldn't do that. And I made a consulting company doing exactly that. I would work my way out of a job. And then my next client would refer me to my, the next person to work with, because I wasn't looking at ways only to stay there and kind of build the organization of money to a certain extent, right? So I think there's something to that, to be honest with you. And I think that gets into a lot of what we've been talking about of thinking, and continuing to evolve as a workforce, because companies are a living, breathing organism. It shouldn't stay stale in one particular place. So it might work to start that conversation within your organization. And now you know a lot of HR people. You can just network with us whenever you want.
Two general thoughts. In the same way that we create new job families, we can eliminate existing job families. So a great example, when product became a thing and Scrum and Agile became a thing, like there were people at Nationwide that had to go to HR and say, I heard about this new thing that exists. We need to create entire job families for it. And getting those large enterprise orgs to shift is challenging, But entire job families that now exist, that didn't exist 15 years ago, will be eliminated in the same way. A lot of our work has been driven by SQL development. We in the past have brought on entire cohorts of folks to do SQL development. That's not happening anymore. And that's not something we're going to specifically focus on. So in theory, those jobs are eliminated, but in reality, now those folks are doing data engineering work that's a lot more significant and high impact. And being in a position where I'm helping external organizations, my goal is to not create dependencies, right? If I go into a client and they need me to exist there forever, then I didn't do a good job. So a lot of the work from a consulting perspective that we're looking to do is go in, solve a problem, create enough institutional knowledge that they know how to, maintain their way of being so that I can step away. And, if I do my job well as a consulting organization, they don't need me. So I'm functionally doing the same thing, but just on an external level of kind of working ourselves out of a job in hopes that the next time they have some work and they want to automate another process, that's something we can contribute.
I wanted to add something else because I think this is a great question. I think the future is kind of murky, right? On like where things are going. But in my circle, I've seen a ton of people, leaders especially, who have taken it as an opportunity when they're laid off or choose to leave somewhere to say, I'm going to commit to X period of time, 3 months, 6 months, whatever feels right for you, to not try and jump into the next thing. Because as a whole human, like, what else could I be doing? Did I have it wrong? Was this career path of just continuing on the ladder, was it actually right? And so I've seen a lot of people in my circles pursue portfolio careers where they're dabbling a little bit. They're doing some fractional work here. They're writing a book here. They're starting to do coaching. They're working with their kids' soccer team, whatever. And I tell you what, every one of those people, when I talk to them 6 months later on their experiment, they are the happiest people I know. They might be making less money. They might not be on the rat race or the same path, but like they are just so happy because they've used the opportunity to be a teacher, right? Like this experience, rather than seeing it as good or bad, like let's not label it. Let's just experiment. Let's just see. And so I think the folks that are taking that opportunity to say, what else could I do? I don't need a midlife crisis to explore. Now's the time to explore. I'm seeing those people being abundantly happy.
Can I just make one more quick point to that?
Please.
And I don't want you to quit your job and blame me for this, but you probably have seen this from a recruiting perspective too. The resumes I used to see years ago that would get thrown in the trash because it was like every 18 months the person left are the norm now. So more and more, I would say not to have the fear factor to think, well, I need to be here for 5 years and then I can go to another role. You're seeing more and more of, they call it the squiggly line careers, right? Where you're kind of doing those types of things and even breaks in resumes that I'd never seen before years ago.
Only thing
Also-
I would left you with is this is no more about our lanes. It's about loops. So where we will be, it's the specializations would not be a thing because GPT would be specialized in doing the job versus it'll be the thing kind of like, me having the understanding of the broader impact. So that's my thing, I would
Well
say.
said. I'll tell you what an incredible conversation to close out our time here in Columbus. A huge thank you to our panelists, Robin, Manisha, Kelly, Jen, and Lacey, for your insights, and to all of you in the audience for the energy that you brought to this discussion. Thank you all for being a part of my tribe of mentors. I just want to say thank you to our sponsors, Rackspace, Sigma Computing, Trace3, and Varonis for making these conversations possible. If you've enjoyed listening to this live recording, be sure to subscribe and share Silicon Heartland Sessions. You can find us wherever you watch or listen to podcasts. And I'll leave you with this. The real question isn't whether AI will replace us. It's how we ensure it elevates us by leading with purpose, building cultures of resilience, and keeping people at the center. We can make AI a force that helps us do our very best work. This is Silicon Heartland Sessions. Thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you.